Now we will recite the Mangalacharan. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupam Kadamayyam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Yuttapadakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Saitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpati Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Evacha पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। So Hare Krishna, again we are there to discuss the secrets of Bhagavad Gita. So first we will just sum up what we did yesterday. Any volunteers? Anybody would like to say? Rashmi Mataji, will you sum up, please?
Yes, ma'am. Yesterday was about devotional service. So God had told that praying on his personal form is more dear to him than anything else. Then uh, you said about Ashtanga Yoga. We have to concentrate on the Chaturbhuj form of the God in the heart. Then you said about Archa Vigraha. Archa Vigraha is the Lord himself, and uh, we should serve him like it's he only in that Vigraha.
He accepts services as Archa Vigra Avatar. So that is his mercy on us.
Yes.
Please continue.
Then this I have not understood properly, but whatever I have understood, I will tell. The detached form of work without offering to God is one thing. Then better than that is meditation, yogic meditation, concentrating on the Chaturbhuj form. Then better than that is to cultivate knowledge. Is that proper way of
Actually, Mataji, they have explained in descending order. I will tell you in ascending order. So first of all, one must come to the stage of regulated living. Animalistic life to regulated living. And then first it is sakam. You have desires, so you work to fulfill your desires. Okay, so till the first stages, there is no connection with spirituality. So you work with desires. Then the second stages, you work as per without any desires, without just as a matter of duty. Then you come to the level of understanding. or you will inquire about God. Sufficient. After that, you have to perform Nishkam Karma for God, as a duty to God. Not just as a matter of duty, as a duty to God. So this Nishkam Karma, at this point of time, you have to perform sacrifices. Actually, at the level of Sakam Karma also, the recommendation of sacrifices is there, even in Karma Kanda section. At that point of time, the understanding is low. One cannot understand God. So he's so inflicted by his desire. So the demigod worship is recommended. So you offer, perform sacrifice, and the demigods will be happy. They will provide rain and facilities, and you can go on fulfilling your desire. So better than that is to perform action in knowledge. That is, first you start with Nishkam Karma, then you come to Karma Yoga. You start performing work uh, as per the instructions of God. So the Varnashrama Dharma is created. This is what we have learnt in the previous chapters. And then you come to the level of, uh, you know, uh, when you are sufficiently purified by performing your prescribed duties, then you are ready to understand Gyan. Before the purification, even if you read about it, you will not understand. So then you do work as sacrifice unto the Lord. And then Karma Yoga and Krishna consciousness is described, where you start performing work for God, working. You understand that now, what is knowledge, for whom I have to perform work, which kind of work is going to entangle me, which will liberate me. So that is Buddhi Yoga. It becomes Buddhi Yoga. The mechanical process is also there, Ashtanga Yoga. So what does the, do this Ashtanga Yogi do? He offers the sacrifice of his senses uh, in his meditation. So sacrifice, you are performing sacrifice of all sorts, but which is the topmost? So in descending order, Lord has explained in the last chapter, the best is that you perform devotional service directly, the Navada Bhakti, that is directly engaging in the service of Lord. If you can't do that, then at least follow the regulative principles and do sadhana, like no meat eating, no intoxication, no illicit sex, no gambling. These are the four principles. You do sadhana, chant his holy name, serve indirectly. You still don't have the taste. It's okay. You continue with the sadhana. Then if you can't do that uh, also, then it is recommended in cultivation of knowledge. Even if you cannot do, try to act giving up all results of your work and try to be self-situated. So first of all, the best practice is regulation of Bhakti Yoga. Then comes like you work, try to work by giving the results. Like some people, they don't engage directly in the service of Lord. They give some donation. That is also good. And lower than that is cultivation of knowledge. Because only after cultivation of right knowledge, you can offer the results of your activities to God. Otherwise, when you don't know God, how will you offer? So cultivation of better than cultivation knowledge is, however, meditation. If you, I mean, before, better than that, because even Ashtanga Yoga comes only after cultivation of knowledge. So it's explained in a way, but one must understand that only after cultivation of knowledge one gets into this kind of activity. Without knowledge, you will be acting on the material platform only. Better than meditation is renunciation of the fruits of action, for by such renunciation, one can attain peace of mind. So even better than meditation, if you see in the order, you have gained knowledge. After gaining knowledge, you either choose to perform Ashtanga Yoga or Bhakti Yoga. So here the Lord is saying that better than after gaining knowledge, better to either take to the process of Ashtanga Yoga or you can take to the process of Bhakti Yoga. So this is how it is, if you are, knowing at which stage of spiritual elevation you are, based on that intellect, you have to perform a work. So the first three categories, that is regulated sense gratification, sakam karma, and then nishkam karma. At this level, there is no connection with God. In the sense, you're just getting purified. So that is how, one must engage according to one's spiritual understanding. Anything else, Mataji? I hope it is better now for you to understand.
Yes.
Yes. So I think we
Then,
are thumbs up. Then Mataji.
about the qualities of a devotee, like he has no enemy. Uh, Even if someone does something bad, he thinks that Krishna has sent him to remove something or to make him more better.
Hmm.
Then he's equipoised in fear and anxiety. He's friends to all, not disturbed, and don't disturb others also, and free from pain. And he's free from all anarthas. Then he doesn't have to work or struggle for money, and even if there is lot of money, he doesn't get agitated with that. Then he's clean from inside and outside, free from all designations. Uh, he devotee understands what activity binds him, and then he neither rejoices nor grieves nor laments. Then he chooses everything intelligently. Uh, then you told about the rose thing, what is love and what is like. Uh, when you like something, you pluck it, but when you love it, you water that flower. And if you are in bhakti yoga, you will pluck that flower and give it to Krishna. And then these stages you said, like uh, first is Shravana, you should hear about God, then be in association with a devotee, then develop sadhana, then comes anartha nivritti, which may take many births. Then there is nishtha, that is determination. Then the ruchi comes, that is taste, that is you don't like anything else apart from Krishna. Then comes asakti, that's deep attachment. Then comes bhava, which is emotions. You want to do everything for Krishna. And then there is prema, which is love, doing what only Krishna wants. Your desire has disappeared. That is the ultimate.
Beautiful, Mataji. Beautiful. Thank you so much for your input. So now we will continue with chapter 30, Nature, the Enjoyer and Consciousness. So before we begin this chapter, we should know now what are we heading for. You see, the first 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 1 to 6, we have actually briefly summarized the entire Bhagavad Gita also, all the processes also, and we have in detail studied Karma Yoga, actually. 1 to 6, the importance of working in Krishna consciousness, Karma Yoga is explained. explained. Then chapter 6 to 12, we have studied in detail how bhakti yoga is performed and how the love of God is achieved. And this is the main crux of uh, the entire Bhagavad Gita. Then we also did Chatur Shloki Bhagavad Gita, which explains the highest essence of Bhagavad Gita. And now from chapter 13 to 18 is the technical section of the Bhagavad Gita, which I consider though. It explains to us about coming to the level of bhakti yoga by cultivation of knowledge or jnana yoga. So what is gyan? Gyan means knowing about matter and spirit. So how we come to know about God by this process, that is going to be discussed. So Srila Prabhupada introduces the topics of final 6 chapters in his purport to text 1 and 2. Now starting with the 13th chapter, how the living entity comes into contact with material nature and how he is delivered by the Supreme Lord through the different methods of fruitive activities, cultivation of knowledge, and discharge of devotional services are explained. Although the living entity is completely different from the material body, he somehow becomes related. This is also explained. Arjuna begins the chapter 13 by asking 6 topics. So why many people ask this, why does Lord let this happen? Why the Lord, when he knows this is a bad place, he lets this happen? So the Lord has created a system based on our desire. And he has created the system, and in this system, we enjoy or suffer the fruits of our result. And but how this pure soul gets contaminated, what is the cause? That will be explained here. So we start with shloka number 1. Arjuna vacha prakritim purusham chaiva kshetram kshetragya jnanameva cha etat veditam ichchami jnanam jneyam cha keshava. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. First shloka, Arjuna asks the question. The second shloka, Sri Bhagavan answers. Idam saritam kaunteya kshetram iti abhichyate etat yo veti tam prahu kshetrajna iti tadvida. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Arjuna said, "O my dear Krishna, I wish to know about Prakriti, nature, Purusha, the enjoyer, and the field, and the knower of the field, and of knowledge, and the object of knowledge." So now, because the Lord has so many times used these terms, Arjuna wants to know, okay, what is, uh, you know, Purusha, Prakriti. First he asks what is Prakriti. Second question is who is Purusha. Third question is what is the field of activity. And fourth is who is the knower of this field, who knows about this field. And third is what is knowledge. Fifth is what is knowledge. And sixth is what is the object of knowledge. What should be known. So we have so much to learn around us, but the time is very less. We can, spend one whole life researching about the, working activity in a virus body or worm's body, but time is precious. So what is the highest knowledge? And how we should cultivate it, what is the process, who is the enjoyer of everything, and what is Prakriti, what is the field of activity, and who is the knower of the field of activity. These are his questions. So, Shloka 3, O Shrine of Bharta, you should understand that I am also the knower in all the bodies. So, but actually, in the second shloka only, the Lord gives answers to actually the first questions, first three actually. Arjuna was inquisitive about Prakriti, nature, Purusha, the enjoyer, Kshetra, the field, Kshetragya, its knower, and knowledge and the object of knowledge. When he inquired about all these, Krishna said that his body is called the field and that one who knows his body is called knower of the field. So this body is the field of activity for the conditioned soul. So I will try to explain this with the help of an example. So first, the Lord chooses to take up the second and the third questions, not the first and the second. So what he tells in the second shloka, that the field of activity is a certain body which is giving to the jiva, individual soul. And this field of activity is like, suppose somebody has a backyard, and in that backyard the child is left. He says, go and play in the backyard. So the child is free to play in the backyard, but his activity is restricted by a fence on the other side and the house on this side. He cannot go beyond that. He knows what is there in the backyard. He knows maybe there is a well, there is a banana tree, there is this, there is that. He knows that much, but beyond that, he doesn't know. So, who is the knower of the field? The jiva, the atma, is the knower of the field. He knows what is going on in his, body, what he can do, what are his capabilities, like that. But he is restricted. Can you perform something outside the possibility of this body? You are given a certain type of eyes, you are given a certain type of nose, you are given a certain type of tongue. So there are so many species of life, there are so many yonis. Each and every jiva has a particular body. For example, the dogs, they can hear even up to very, low hertz, of sound. But we can't. It's not possible for us. Why? Because our field of activity is restricted like that. We can hear and see only up to, the boundary of the field which we are allotted. We cannot perform activities beyond that field. So like that, the worm, for example, you see, the field of activity for the worm maybe is just a hole and food, hole and food. There is a hole in which it goes, comes out, eats. So that field of activity is based on our karma and desire. So based on our karma and desire, we get this particular field to perform our activities. And who is the knower of the field? The knower of the field is the Atma, the consciousness. But now we come to shloka number 3. O Shrine of Bharta, you should understand that I am also the knower in the bodies. And to understand this body and its knower is called knowledge. That is my opinion. So what is knowledge? Is two. So there are two Kshetragyam Chapi Mam Vidhi. So there are two Kshetrajna, knowers of the field. One is the Atma. Then he adds, Lord, that I also am the knower of the field. In fact, I am the supreme knower, and the limited knower is the Atma. How? Just like you know what is going on in your backyard, but the neighbor doesn't know what is going on in the backyard, in your backyard. But the Lord, who is the king, the example here is the king. He knows what is going on in each and every backyard of his kingdom. He has to be informed. He knows the activities going on in every backyard. So like that, the Jiva knows only about his specific body, but the Lord knows about each and every living being's body, what is going on, how his desires are being formed, what are his activities. And based on his desires and activities, again another body is created. Nobody can hide their desires from the Lord. We may think that we can independently act and hide our desires from maybe others, our other people around us, but nothing is hidden from the Lord. He knows everybody's desires. Even when we unconsciously desire, just like a flash of light, even that doesn't go missed. So meticulous, so accurate. For example, Bali Maharaj, when he was performing that Ashwamedh Yajna, I think a big yajna, to acquire more, Vaman Dev enters the arena, and his wife, she's sitting just next to him. And when Vaman Dev enters, and everybody sees what an effulgent boy this is, just for a flash of second, a desire comes in her heart. The wife of Bali Maharaj, I don't know her name, I don't remember that. That what a beautiful boy. Hope he was my son. I had a son like this. Just for a flash of second. And that desire is fulfilled by the Lord in the Krishna Leela when she is born as Putana. So many births before she had that desire, it just crossed her mind once maybe, And Lord saw that and fulfilled. So she had come with the intention to kill the Lord. But the Lord delivered her also, because the Lord, he sees only the positives. He just saw that she has come to serve me as a mother. So he gave her the, position of a mother, but based on her karma and desire. She desired to be Lord's mother. He fulfilled that. But because of her karma, she came there with the intention to kill the Lord. So the Lord is the topmost Kshetrajna, in the sense that he is the knower of all the fields of activity. So in this verse, Krishna has defined jnana as knowing the body and the soul. Now here, the Lord is answering about the fourth question. What is knowledge of this field of activity? And the knower of this field is knowledge. He will complete his description of knowledge in text 8 to 12 and 24 to 37 by explaining the process of achieving knowledge, how we must get that knowledge. So the Lord is not answering all the questions as Arjuna asked. He is answering one by one. Srila Prabhupada defines jnana in his purport, perfect knowledge of the constitution of the body, the constitution of the individual soul, and the constitution of the super soul, known in the terms of Vedic literature as jnana. So what is knowledge is to know about this field of activities, the knower, the uh, the limited knower of the field of activities, and the super soul, the complete knower of all the activities. That is the opinion of Krishna. To understand both the soul and the super soul, and one yet distinct is knowledge. So one cannot sum up that the knower of field is one. Even in examples, the Lord has said that there are two birds seated on the tree of material existence. One is eating the fruits of his, work, and the other is just observing the Paramatma. So the Paramatma is there in everybody's heart, and they are always two different identities. Like the monist, and some people say that when one gets completely purifies, one becomes God. Everybody is God. God is definitely there in everyone as Paramatma or Sakshi, but the position of the living entity can never be equal to God. What to talk about being more than Him? There is nobody equal to God, nor is anybody more than God, greater than God. So here Srila Prabhupada explains कि Krishna already discussed in this point in chapter 5 the living entity's realization that I am not this body constitutes enlightenment. Such enlightenment, however, born of the mode of goodness, is insufficient for liberation. When his knowledge increases to include knowledge of the super soul, he becomes liberated. So when you are in Sattva Gun, that is why they say at least live in Sattva Gun, so that you can understand this knowledge. Without living in Sattva Gun, you cannot understand what the knowledge is. So what is the jnana? Jnana is restricted to the knowledge of the field of activity and the limited knower of the activity. But this is not sufficient for liberation. You know what is matter, you know what is spirit. That will not liberate you. Only the knowledge of knowing the Paramatma, that is the super knower of this field, which will get you out of the cycle of birth and death. Because knowing about the field of activities and the knower of the field is material, it is restricted to the material world. Whereas knowing about the super soul is transcendental. Because Lord is transcendental, knowledge about him is also transcendental. And one must know him like that. Thus, to come to the Brahma Bhuta liberated platform, one needs to know the super soul, not just the field of activity and knower of its field, but also the super soul. So this body, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains here, you see, that this body equipped with the senses is the facility for material contact. So how do we come, how does the soul, which is pure in nature, how does it come in contact with this material nature? So the body is the source. With the body, we can, come in contact with the material nature. The so-called field, because it is in the ground on which the tree of material existence grows. So it's like the soul is planted in the material sky, and from the seed comes a body, and the body in turn, it performs so many activities, it develops desires. The jiva who knows the body is called Kshetragya, both in his condition of bondage, wherein he identifies himself with the body, thinking in terms of I and mine, and in the liberated condition in which he does not identify with the body or conception of I and mine. So, what is the state of bondage? When a jiva is identifying with the body as I, mine, I am the body. This is contaminated consciousness. And what is liberated consciousness? I am not this body, or I am a soul. Aham Brahmasmi. Like a farmer, the Kshetragya, also the enjoyer of the fruits of the trees in his field, as described by the personality of Godhead. The village vultures eat one fruit of this tree, while the forest swans eat another. So there are many types of fruits on this tree. What we choose to eat decides our future. So the vultures, the example given here is the vultures, you see, they are naturally attracted to filthy things, dead bodies. They feed on dead bodies, dead flesh. So because that is their natural tendency, their senses, their field of activity is so designed that they are attracted to only filth. So our body decides what we are going to choose. Our inclinations will be made as per this body. For example, there is a pig. Even if you give it, gulab jamun, it will not relish it. It will not be attracted. It will be attracted to only filth. It is so designed. So that is why the human birth is so important, because you are given a field where you have access to even transcendental knowledge, which is not there in other bodies. They cannot come to this platform. And the swans, on the other hand, they are, swan is a bird. If you give it milk mixed in with water, it has the ability to, just drink away the milk. It will leave the water. This is the ability of a swan. So what we choose to eat is our choice. The Lord is only observing us, but the choices we make. So we are solely responsible for our field of activity, not the Lord. Thus, the one tree of material existence appears in many forms as the means of attaining hell, heaven, and liberation. So many forms are there, 84 lakh to be precise. These are born out of different, mixtures of the three modes of material nature. We have already studied that karma means creating another body, another field of activity based on our choices. So, because it is born from the Lord's external energy, it is called Maya Mayam. By the grace of the worshipable spiritual masters, one is made to understand this tree. Those who are in knowledge of the Kshetra and Kshetragya actually know the Vedas. So this entire Vedas, all the rituals that we do, all the festivals, everything that sacrifices we perform, what is the purpose of that? To know about this field, the knower of the field as Atma and knower of the field as Paramatma. But when you know about The Jnana Yoga is restricted only to knower of the field and knower of the field of activity and knower of the field of activity. Okay, you know what is matter, you know what is spirit. What is the use? Still you know about the knower of field as Lord, super soul. You're still on the material plane only. That is why they say, there is a very nice shloka, Anasaktasyan Vishyan, what is that? Jnana karmani anavrutam anukulena krishnanu bhakti ruchyate. Gyan and karam, bhakti is above that. That you are performing nishkam karma also when you come to that state also, but you don't know about God. It is only material. You have the knowledge, you know the difference between matter and spirit. That is also material. When a person knows about the super soul or God, only then actually he can choose the right activity. So bhakti is above gyan and karma. It is not restricted to this material field of activities and its knower. 5. That knowledge of the field of activities and the knower of activities is described by various sages in various Vedic writings. It is especially presented in the Vedanta Sutra with all the reasoning to cause and effect. So by quoting now here, Srila Prabhupada has, established this truth by quoting from Taittiriya Upanishad of the Yajurveda. Srila Prabhupada confirms Krishna's words and more details are available in the Vedas. There are basically two Vedic systems by which one progresses indirectly without descending information in realization. The second chapter of the Taittiriya Upanishad, which Srila Prabhupada quotes in this purport, describes one of them. It is called Vyasti, the system in which a person directs his meditation towards the self and thus seeks to understand the Absolute by considering himself a fragment of the Supreme. Analogously, one can understand the nature of the entire ocean by scrutinizing a drop. So, meditation toward the self, why they say know the self, know the self? Because qualitatively we are one with God. It's like you want to know what the quality of water of the sea is. You can just take a drop of the sea water to a lab and test it. It will have the same quality. But what is there inside the sea? What grows inside the sea? What animals are there in the sea? That all you will not know. So, knowing the self or meditating on the self will limit your knowledge. In the Vyasti system, one observes encasing the living entity's consciousness. 5 koshas or sheaths are there. So the consciousness is from the low level, here it is explained, as we gradually cleanse, the area, the sphere of our activity increases. So here the 5 koshas of consciousness are explained. See, first of all, it is Annamaya Buddhi. Then it is Pranamaya Buddhi. Then it comes to Jnanmaya Buddhi, Vijnanmaya Buddhi, and like that there are koshas here. So how to explain this now in detail we cannot go, but Annamaya Buddhi is minimal consciousness, where your activity where you see everything as food, Annamaya Buddhi. So these lower forms of life or lower fields of activities which are provided is because of this kind of, you know, sheets covering of uh, what you say, on our consciousness. So this year it is given that first it is Annamaya Buddhi, dependence upon food for existence. This is a materialistic realization of the Supreme. Then in Pranamaya, after realizing the Supreme Absolute Truth in food, one can realize the Absolute Truth in the living symptoms or life forms. In Jnanamaya, realization extends beyond the living symptoms to the point of thinking, feeling, and willing. And then there is Brahman realization called Vijnanamaya, in which the living entity's mind and life systems are distinguished from the living entity himself. The next, the supreme state is Anandamaya, realization of all blissful nature. Thus, there are 5 stages of Brahman realization which are called Brahma Pucham. So, this technically, if you see, uh, even up to these 5 sheets or koshas, you only come to the Brahman realization, not God realization completely. There are 5 sheets. Annamaya Buddhi, that is only food. Then you come to Pranamaya, realizing the Supreme Truth. One can, in living symptoms, that is breathing, how we distinguish our intellect. Now, lower species of life, they only know what to eat. They eat the worm, it goes back in the hole, it eats, it goes back in the hole. Limited intellect. Pranamaya, when you see, this is now some animals are higher beings, they know what to kill. They are not going to go and kill a rock. They will see a rabbit running and they will kill. You can see the life symptoms like that. So like that, our consciousness, it goes on expanding. The sheets of, illusion are taken off to the extent where we start, we differentiating between matter and spirit. Brahman realization. It has 5 sheets. The Vedanta Sutra also describes the Supreme by saying Anand Mayo Bhyasa. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is by nature full of joy. To enjoy his transcendental bliss, he expands into Vijnanmaya, Pranmaya, Jnanamaya, and Annamaya in the field of activities. The living entity is considered to be the enjoyer and different from him and is Anandamaya. So our soul is actually Anandamaya, which is different from the field of activity. It is in the field of activity, but it is untouched. It is only this sheath which protect him from realizing God. So once these sheaths are removed, then he is able to identify with himself as a spirit soul and not this body. It is mentioned here that the Cores of Brahma-Sutra are very nicely arranged according to cause and effect. Some of the sutras or aphorisms are Na Vidyat Ashrute, Natma Shrute. These are all technical terms, but broadly, it is how, our consciousness, as it grows, the sphere of our activities increase. For example, the sphere of a amoeba or a living entity at the lowest level, maybe it is just a very limited area. Worm, it is better. Then you have, worms or insects, then reptiles, then birds. Like that, the consciousness, as it develops and advances, it is provided with a better field of activity or a better understanding, intellect, till he comes to the human body. So this is the process of evolution. And when you get this human birth, it is so valuable. And there is no guarantee that we will get this body again. Because here you have an intellect which can understand God, which can has a higher understanding. 6 and 7, the 5 great elements, false ego, intelligence, the unmanifested, the 10 senses, and the mind, and the 5 sense of objects, desire, hatred, happiness, distress, the aggregate, the life symptoms, and convictions. All these are considered in the summary to be the field of activities and its interactions. Here, Krishna gives a more detailed explanation of the field of activities. Text 6 lists the 5 great elements: false ego, intelligence, the unmanifest, the 10 senses, the mind, and the 5 senses, 5 sense objects, the 24. So here, as per the Sankhya philosophy, there are 24 elements which make the field of activities for the conditioned soul. And this field of activity is created by the uh, intermingling of the 3 modes of material nature. So this field of activity comprises of 24 elements. First are the Pancha Mahabhutas. What are the Pancha Mahabhutas? Ether, uh, air, fire, water, and earth. And then you have their respective senses. That is, so these are 5, the Panchabhutas are 5. Then there you have the respective senses. For ether, there is ear. For air, there is skin. For fire, there are eyes. And for water, there is tongue. And for earth, it is nose, corresponding senses. And the corresponding sense or uh, Gyanindriya. So what happens is, because to perceive these elements, we are given provided the respective senses, and the first you have the Gyanindriyas, that is the ear. These are all Gyanindriyas. Then their respective uh, senses or their activities, that is hearing, feeling, touching or feeling, and seeing, and tasting, and smelling. 5. And then you have the working senses, which are the karmendriya, with which you perform activities. There are senses which are for perceiving the world around us, and then there are indriyas which are to perform activities. And what are they? We have the hands, the legs, the mouth, the genitals, and the rectum. So these are the karmendriyas with which we perform activities of all sorts. And then after these 20, we have 3 subtle senses: the mind, intelligence, false ego. They are subtle, they are not seen, but they are the actual, what you call the chip in which all our, desires and activities are recorded. And it is carried forward to the next body. And the 24th element is the contaminated consciousness. Why contaminated consciousness? Because the field is given only to the contaminated consciousness. The pure stage of consciousness is that I am the servant of Lord, that is true consciousness. And the contaminated consciousness is I am the enjoyer of this field of activity. The only difference is realization of one's transcendental relationship with God. So technically, in these 24 elements, all our activities are designed as per these. 8 to 12 now. Now 8 to 12, now the Lord is going to describe us the process of acquiring knowledge. So here again now we have earlier, some qualities were mentioned in the previous chapter. And now here again we will recite, or we will at least read the purpose. Humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest, even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant unalloyed devotion of me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge, and beside this, whatever there may be is ignorance. So now Arjuna had asked him, what is knowledge? So the Lord summed up these 20 qualities, which is actually knowledge. Apart from this, whatever you may know is ignorance. Why Lord says like that? Because these qualities are cultivated in person who is sufficiently purified. Without purification, he will be limited to thinking only about the body, and these qualities are way ahead. So these qualities um, are inculcated in us because of our association. They will not develop so easily in lower species of life. The human form is, that is why. How will you know that a person is in knowledge? If a person comes to know about the difference between matter and spirit, whether he's self-realized or not, how will you know? So by these qualities, whether he's in knowledge or not. See, we have a system of certification, somebody has some knowledge, they will write it on a piece of paper and they will give you a mark sheet. And based on that, whoever is employing us will judge what is our intellect. But that is material intellect. How advanced a person is in knowledge, because the Lord has summed up that by all the Vedas I am to be known. You should know me. So person who knows Krishna knows actually everything. The primary condition actually for anybody to perform bhakti, the quality which is required is humility. That is why it is come first, humility. Amanvitam. So these qualities can be discussed in detail. They are so deep. Each quality can be discussed for 4-5 classes. They are so deep. But we have to sum up here. So these 20 items include qualities like cleanliness, which is developed, are favorable for spiritual advancement. So these qualities should be inculcated. They also include elements of process of advancement, such as approaching a bona fide spiritual master and perceiving the evils of birth, death, disease, and old age. Integrated as a process, these items are the means of acquiring transcendental knowledge or an accurate understanding of the body, the soul, and the super soul. So, just by knowing the field of activity between matter and spirit, you are not going to get closer to God. So, these qualities have to be inculcated if you want to know about God. Therefore, taken as a process that carries one to the transcendence, these 20 items have nothing to do with the field of activity and its interactions. So the specific field of activity we get, the specific body we get, has got nothing to do with these qualities. They are developed in a person's consciousness. So this process of knowledge is sometimes misunderstood by less intelligent men as being the interaction of the field of activities, but actually this is the real process of knowledge. If one accepts this process, then the possibility of approaching the absolute truth exists. This is not interaction of the 24 elements as described before. This is actually the means to get out of the entanglement of these elements. In the next set of verses 13 to 19, Krishna addresses Arjuna the sixth topic, the object of knowledge. So what is the process of knowledge? What is knowledge? And the sixth verse, what is to be known? What is the object of knowledge? So now the Lord will explain to Arjuna 13. I shall now explain the knowable, knowing which you will taste the eternal Brahman, the spirit, beginless and subordinate to me, lies beyond the cause and effect of this material world. So here the Lord has summed up that the Brahman is subordinate to him, but it is beyond the sphere of this material world. The material world, the Mahatattva, has these 24 elements, and by interaction of the three modes of material nature, a specific field of activity is created for a living being based on his desire and previous activities. And again, in this field of activities, he enjoys or suffers the fruits of his results. So here the term knowable used here signifies the object of knowledge about which Arjuna is inquired in text 1. So the Lord has explained the field of activities and knower of the field. He has also explained the process of knowing the knower of the field of activities. Now he begins to explain the knowable. First the soul, then the super soul. So by this process of Jnana Yoga, or that, you come to know what is spirit, what is the sphere of his activities. Now, by this process of cultivating qualities, and how do you cultivate qualities? Qualities are not cultivated. There can be a certification for a person's academic education, where nowhere on the certificate you know about that person's qualities. Suppose a person is very highly qualified, but he's a cheater. That cannot be put on the certificate. That is there in his character, and that is actual knowledge. So this person, he may be very highly qualified, but he is dishonest. That cannot be certified on a piece of paper. That your activities will decide what qualities that person has. That is true knowledge. So these qualities, they can be inculcated. How? That process is also there in one of the qualities. He will approach a spiritual master from a person who already has this quality. If you want to become a doctor, you have to approach another doctor and you have to practice under his guidance. So now, if you want to have these qualities, you should first of all have approach a person who has these qualities. So a person who has these qualities is fit to take guidance from. So humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness. So if we truly want to get knowledge, then this is the process. Text 14 to 18 will describe the super soul as Gayam. And in this text, as Srila Prabhupada explains, describes the first object of knowledge, the soul. The description of the Brahman mentioned in the verse is in relation to the individual soul. And when the word Brahman is applied to the living entity, it is to be understood that he is Vijnana Brahma, as opposed to the Ananda Brahma. Ananda Brahma is the supreme Brahman personality of Godhead. So when we apply this knowledge to the limited consciousness or individual soul, it tells us about Brahman, but Brahman is limited in the sense Brahman is inferior to God. That the Lord has himself said. But when we come to realize him as Anand Bhyasat, Anandamaya, that the element of happiness is not there up to the knowledge of Brahman. The five koshas which were explained, so that is Brahman is there only up to the level of Vijnana. But Anand my buddhi, that is experiencing joy, will come only after knowing about the super soul. So 14. Everywhere are his hands and legs, his eyes, heads and faces, and he has ears everywhere. In this way, the super soul exists, pervading everything. So I would want you all to read the translation here. Sarvata, everywhere. Pani, hands. Padam, legs. Tat, that. Sarvata, everywhere. Aksi, eyes. Sira, head. Mukham, faces. Sarvata, everywhere. Shruti mat, having ears. Loke, in the world. Sarvam, everything. Avratya, covering. Tishtati, exists. So this is the description of the super soul. And you please read the translation and the word. Nowhere it is written that he does not have a form. He has hands, he has feet, he has eyes, he has ears. The only difference is he has unlimited number of them. So this is the description of the super soul, and he exists everywhere. 15. The super soul is the original source of all senses, yet he is without senses. He is unattached. So Rishikesha, we have discussed. Rishik means senses and Isha means the master. So all the senses that we see belong to the Lord only. And we are illegally utilizing these senses for our personal sense gratification. So what are we eligible for? We are eligible for more imprisonment. And how this imprisonment comes? In the form of a body or limited field of activity. The supreme truth exists outside and inside of all living beings, the moving and the non-moving, because he is subtle. He is beyond the power of material senses to see or to know, although far, far away, he is also near to all. So he can be far, he can be near us. So God is not limited like us to be only in one place. 17. Although the super soul appears to be divided among all beings, he is never divided. He is situated as one. Although he is maintainer of every living entity, it is to be understood that he devours and develops all. He develops everyone, and he is the cause of their uh, end also. 18. He is the source of light in all luminous objects. He is beyond the darkness of matter and is unmanifested. He is knowledge. He is the object of knowledge and he is the goal of knowledge. He is situated in everyone's heart. So finally in text 18, Krishna clearly reveals the identity of one he has been describing. The Gnayam is super soul, who is Riddhi Sarvasya. He lives in the heart as Paramatma, within the hearts of all. Srila Prabhupada kindly informed us earlier in this translation and purport in verses 14, 15, and 17 that the supreme knowable object, who has been described as unknowable, is nevertheless situated in everybody's heart as Paramatma. There are several verses from Svetasvatara Upanishad to substantiate that these Gita's texts have been describing neither the living entity nor the Brahman but the super soul. Brahman is the effulgence which is coming out of the body of Lord. But it is not complete knowledge. Krishna ends his explanation of knowable by describing to Arjuna the qualification of one who is able to understand these topics. Now, from here on, the Lord is going to tell us the qualification of a person who can know the super soul or the Lord. Krishna uses the word Mad Bhakta. We must read the shloka actually. इति क्षेत्रं तथा ज्ञानं ज्ञेयं कोक्षं संवसता मद्भक्ता एतद्विज्ञाये मद्भावेभ्यो विद्याते. So the Lord has described in summary the body, knowledge, and the knowable. This knowledge is of three things: the knower, the knowable, the process of knowing. Combined, these are called Vijnana or the science of knowledge. Perfect knowledge can be understood by unalloyed devotees of the Lord directly. Others are unable to understand. So till this devotion has developed in someone's heart, he cannot know the Lord. The primary qualification to know the Lord is that you have to be a devotee. Later in his purpose, Srila Prabhupada provides a valuable summary of difficult subjects described thus far in this chapter. Now to summarize, one may understand that verses 6 and 7 beginning from Mahabhutani and continuing through the Chetana analyze the material elements and certain manifestations or the symptoms of life. These combine to form the body or the field of activities. And verses 8 to 12 from Amanvitvam through Tattva Janartha Darshanam describes the process of knowledge for understanding both types of the knower of the field of activities. Who are the two types of knower of the fields of activities? The Atma is the first knower, limited knower, and Paramatma is the ultimate knower, namely the soul and the super soul. So who are the knower of this field of activity? The soul and the super soul. Thus, three items have been described: the field of activity, the body, the process of understanding, and both the soul and the super soul. It is specially described here that only unalloyed devotees of the Lord can understand these three items clearly. So for these, the devotees, Bhagavad Gita is fully useful. It is they who can attain the supreme goal, the nature of the supreme Lord, Krishna. In other words, only devotees, not others, can understand Bhagavad Gita and derive desired results. So the qualification. So why the Lord spoke Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna? He was a devotee, primary qualification. So 20, the material nature and the living entity should be understood to be beginless. Their transformations and the modes of matter are the product of material nature. So the material nature is working under the guidance of the Lord. So both, even the material nature is eternal from the time, because the Lord's energies are not different from him. But she's performing all this uh, on the instruction of a master, that is the Lord. So these modes, they bewilder us. An association with this mode creates another field of activity in which we perform. We eat the fruits of misery and joy. And then again, another field is created based on our past desire and activity. And the super soul is a witness to all this. Both the living entity and the Lord are changeless and eternal. Only the material nature undergoes vikara, transformation, although the living entity remains unchanged. So the changes are there, the vikaras. There are actually 6 vikaras. A body is born, it grows, it remains like that for some time. It reproduces, then it dwindles, it starts decaying, and then it is finished. So these are 6 vikaras which are there in the material nature, the field of activity, but the soul is always, you know, it is unchangeable. Just like the Lord is unchangeable, the soul also remains the same in all these bodies. But its false identification with this body is what creates the miseries. The relationship between the living entity and the changes caused by material nature is elaborated in the next verse. 21. Nature is said to be the cause of all material causes and effects, whereas the living entity is the cause of various sufferings and enjoyments in the world. So nature creates the facility. She is responsible for creating a facility for us in the form of this body, but we are responsible for the various sufferings and enjoyment in this world based on our choices. This text again addresses the topic of the doer, which I have already explained to you. Who is the doer? The person who desires is the doer. And when a person desires, the Paramatma in the heart sanctions that desire, the super soul. And then when the sanction is granted, as per the Lord's instructions, the facility is created by the material nature. So there are 3 doers in every activity. So the living entity is the cause of his sufferings and enjoyments because he has illicitly embraced Maya with the desire to predominate and enjoy independently of Krishna. He thus becomes entangled in material nature, taking his karma into consideration. The material nature then creates for him a field meant ultimately for suffering. This all takes place under the sanction of the actual Purusha, the super soul. Therefore, although the nature is the cause of the entire material manifestation, The living entity causes his own happiness and distress. Krishna explains this point further in the next verse. 22. The living entity in the material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. This is due to the association with the material nature. Thus, he meets with the good and evil amongst various species. This is a very key memory verse, very, very important. Purusha prakriti stho hi bhunte prakriti janvuna karana guna sangasya sat asat yoni janmashu. So here, as long as he is captivated by his false manifestation, he has to continue transmigrating from one body to another. So how are these bodies created? From millions of births, uh, we are doing activities, again we are getting a body. We associate with different modes of material nature, the sattvagun, rajogun and tamogun, and based on that our inclinations develop, and because of these inclinations we perform activities. Uh, the fruits of this activity again are enjoyed through another body, maybe a better or worse. If you have to suffer, you will get an inferior body. If you have to maybe enjoy, you will get the body of a devata, but nevertheless you are bound. Follows the ways of life. What are these ways of life? Based on our association. There are different ways of life. There are some insects, who are born in the night, and before the sunrise their lifespan is over also. So just look at the limited scope of their activity. They have never seen light, deep darkness. So his subordinate energy, because of illusion, however, he is placed within the material energy, Purusha Prakriti Stohi, to imagine himself as a Purusha, as the enjoyer. Thus, incarcerated and the suffering within matter, the jiva focuses his attempt on the impossible. What is the impossible? Enjoying by exploiting the creations of the gunas. He thinks he will be able to exploit this temporary manifestation, which is a creation of the gunas, the modes of material nature, by his association with the material nature, while in an enjoying spirit, karanam gunasangasya, a jiva traps himself in the cycle of repeated birth and death. Sad asad yoni janmashu. Yoni janmashu means, yoni means womb. He enters different wombs. Practically, by his attempt, the living entity becomes matter and experiences change, birth, death, old age, and disease. So, by this association, this spiritual nature of the living entity, the soul is spiritual. So, by association, this nature changes to, instead of being blissful and eternal and full of knowledge, what it becomes? It becomes temporary, ignorant, and very miserable, depressed, contaminated state it gets. And what is the result? By this misidentification, Janam, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi, birth, death, old age, and disease. Though he is changeless, actually the soul is eternal. Even if the body is finished, the soul remains. Krishna next describes the actual Purusha. 23. Yet in this body there is another transcendental enjoyer who is the Lord, the supreme proprietor who exists as the overseer and permitter who is known as the super soul. This verse describes the relationship between Paramatma and Jivatma. In the language of this chapter, both the Kshetragya, here the super soul is called Purusha Para, the transcendental enjoyer. He is the overseer and the permitter. By his sanction, the living entity may attempt to fulfill his desire to act as a Purusha. The fact is that every individual living entity is eternal part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and both of them are very intimately related as friends. But the living entity has the tendency to reject the sanction of the Supreme Lord and act independently in an attempt to dominate nature. And because he has this tendency, he is called the marginal energy of the Supreme Lord. The living entity can be situated either in the material energy or the spiritual energy. Tatastha Shakti, the marginal energy of the Lord. The living entity can be situated either in the material energy or the spiritual energy. As long as he is conditioned by material energy, the Supreme Lord, as his friend, the super soul, stays with him just to get him to return to spiritual energy. Why the heart is following us even in the body of a worm? Because he wants us back into his spiritual energy. He knows what is the result of being in association of the material energy. The Lord is always eager to take him back to the spiritual energy, but due to his minute independence, the individual entity is continually rejecting the association of spiritual light. This misuse of independence is the cause of this material strife in the conditioned nature. The Lord, therefore, is always giving instruction from within and from without. From without, he gives instruction as stated in Bhagavad Gita, and from within, he tries to convince the living entity that his activities in the material field are not conducive to real happiness. Just give it up and turn your faith towards me. Then you will be happy, he says. Thus, the intelligent person who places his faith in the Paramatma or the Supreme Personality of Godhead begins to advance towards the blissful eternal life of knowledge. So, what is the nature of the Lord? When he says they attain my nature, the nature of the Lord is Sat Chid Anand. Sat Chidananda Vigraha. Sat means eternity. Chid means full of knowledge. Knowledge of the self and the supreme, not material knowledge. And Ananda is always blissful. But because of our contact with the material nature, we become Nirananda. Some perceive the super soul within themselves through meditation, others through cultivation of knowledge, and still others through working without fruited desires. So these are the three processes, the karma yoga, Jnana yoga, and Ashtanga yoga, meditation. Again, there are those who, although not conversant with the spiritual knowledge, begin to worship the Supreme Person upon hearing about him from others. Because of their tendency to hear from the authorities, they also transcend the path of birth and death. This is about devotees who hear from authorities and accept. Like for example, Srila Prabhupada gives this example that the most intelligent person you see, he will hear about somebody's experience and learn from it. He will hear that if you perform dacoitry, you will go to jail and be punished. So what he does, he doesn't do such thing. He hears about somebody else's experience and learns from it. The second class person, uh, he does not, mend his ways till, it happens to him. He goes through that experience. Somebody says, you are going to perform dacoity, you will go to jail. Chalo, let us see what happens. He does the dacoity. And then he goes to jail. Then he realizes what the other person's experience was correct. Then, and there is a third category of people, who don't listen. They go through the misery and they do it again. Most foolish people. So here, the most intelligent of them all are begin to worship the Supreme Lord upon hearing about him from others. Because of their tendency to hear from the authorities, they accept the word of the authority. They also transcend the path of birth. Just by hearing, they transcend. O chief of Bhartas, know that whatever you see in the existence, both the moving and non-moving, is only combination of field of activity and the knower of the field. So this is the truth. One who sees the super soul accompanying the individual soul in all bodies and who understands that neither the soul nor the super soul within the destructible body is ever destroyed actually sees. 30. One who can see all the activities are performed by the body which is created of material nature and sees that the self does nothing, actually sees. So only the matter, the interaction of matter causes our activity. 31. When a sensible man ceases to see different identities due to different material bodies, and he sees how beings are expanded everywhere, he attains the Brahman conception. He is able to see that spiritual spark in every living entity. He understands. Now, for example, you see the suffering of the person, any person, or any living being, any animal. He has created that field of activity and made the choice by choosing the wrong fruit. 32. Those with the vision of eternity can see that imperishable soul is transcendental, eternal, and beyond the modes of nature. Despite contact with the material body, O Arjuna, the soul neither does anything nor is entangled. The sky, due to its subtle nature, does not mix with anything, although it is all pervading. Similarly, the soul situated in the Brahman vision does not mix with the body, though situated in the body. Actually, that is an advice to us. We should live in this body but not mix with it. O son of Bharta, as the sun alone illuminates all the universe, so does the living entity, one within the body, illuminates the entire body by consciousness. So the soul is responsible for the life in the body, the life airs. Because the soul is distributed all over the body, we are known as living things. Without this spiritual energy, everything is dead matter. Those who see with the eyes of knowledge the difference between body and the knower of the body can also understand the process of liberation from bondage in material nature, attain to the supreme goal. So by cultivation of this knowledge also, you will gradually detach from the material plane and understand. This will help you in they can also understand. One should recognize the process of liberation as described in the 8th verse through 12. The process is the qualities which are described. That is the process of knowing God. Then one can go on to the supreme destination. Unless one develops these qualities, there is no question of knowing about Lord. One can understand that this body is matter. It can be analyzed with its 24 elements. If you want to know about the body, you can understand with the help of these 24 elements. The body is the gross manifestation, and the subtle manifestation is the mind and the psychological effects. And the symptoms of life are interaction of these features. When the field of activity and the soul, uh, the mind, intelligence, and false ego, not the soul, they interact, then uh, these symptoms of life. What are the symptoms of life? You are born, you grow, you maintain, you reproduce, you dwindle, you die. These are the symptoms of life. Does a laptop or a phone have these symptoms? Is the phone born? Does the phone grow? Does it maintain? So this is life. Life comes from life. Very beautiful book by Srila Prabhupada. There is not even one microorganism that we can produce. Maybe we can genetically transform a living entity, but produce life in the laboratory without life. Is it possible? No. Even now it's not possible. But over and above this, there is a soul, there is also a super soul. The soul and the super soul are two. This material world is working by the conjunction of the soul and the 24 material elements. One who can see the constitution of the whole material manifestation as this combination of soul and material elements can also see the situation of the Supreme Soul and becomes eligible for transfer to the spiritual world. These things are meant for contemplation and for realization, and one should have a complete understanding of this chapter with the help of a spiritual master. A very technical chapter, but we have come to the end of this chapter. How to cultivate knowledge about the Supreme by Jnana Yoga. Jnana, the process of Jnana. So thus ends the 13th chapter. Any questions or comments?
Mm, yes, Mataji. So I just wanted to share something, and what I realized that uh, it is means as I already told in one of the initial days of this course that it is too heavy that at least if I read 3 pages, no, so whole day I keep on contemplating on it.
No, this is heavy. This chapter 13 is quite heavy.
And
We
the
can
more
go on.
heavy, the more heavy it is, the more means I want to dig into it. So there were some questions which I was thinking, okay, how this, and the moment I think, okay, within means it takes only one day that I get the answers here.
That is sincere desire, Mataji. The Lord reciprocates in the form of guidance. And
And
one must
mhm,
recognize, see, even in the process of understanding 8 to 12, approaching a spiritual master is a quality which develops.
mhm,
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Yeah.
yes, yeah,
So that is the quality one must develop.
mhm,
And these qualities are developed in us, the process of by association only. So the only choice you have is choose your association.
yeah, yeah. This
This
I
is the
can relate.
only minute choice you have, nothing else. And these choices, association means what you choose to see, what you choose to hear, what you choose to eat. The gross senses, they are what get uh, attracted by these three modes of material nature. And this distraction has to minimize and then finished.
Hmm.
That is the criteria for transcending this material sky.
And sometimes it is too much like it's not end here. Like if I get into any of the idea or concept which has been told here, or I come across during reading, so it's too much like I keep on. Okay, two people inside me. So this whole analysis goes on, and I get so much tired that I have to take a little nap. This is my situation. High voltage knowledge, which is not.
That the process of knowledge is described here, Mataji. Go through that again and again,
Yeah.
because you are interested in knowing about the Supreme. You must strictly follow the process which is there in Bhagavad Gita.
Right.
That is these 20 qualities: humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification. Actual austerity, the people don't even understand what is the reason behind all these fasts, all these austerities, and all these yajnas
Hmm.
is to, understand God. But some people, they perform rituals without knowing about. So austerity is meant to, basically, austerity means that uh, refraining from sense gratification willingly in order to understand. Because they say that, more the sense gratification, lesser is your understanding.
Hmm.
So that is why they say, dan, tap, yajna. These three activities should be continued at any cost, even in sannyas ashram. Charity,
Mhm.
giving up willingly, not forcefully. Make it a practice. If you are not going to inculcate these qualities in you before you die, no question of understanding God, no question of getting out of the cycle of birth and death. And Srimad Bhagavatam is compiled to glorify all these qualities, to appreciate these qualities. Because the process is, when you appreciate, you acquire.
Yes. Yes.
That is why the fault finding is strictly discouraged.
Mhm.
Because we find fault in others because of our own personal understanding, limited understanding.
Mhm. Yes.
You
Just
are
like.
not, that person is bad, he is good. You are not able to see anybody in relation to God. So you find faults. You will find faults in neighbor, will find faults in devotees also, they do. You'll find fault in other devotees. So one must consciously inculcate these qualities to understand everybody's relation with God. And that is when we understand our relationship. So thank you, Mataji, for your
And
realization.
Mataji, yesterday, what happened that one thing I realized, okay, I was searching, I don't know what is the meaning of my name, basically. Like, uh, they say Nachatra or something like that. So I just want to know the literal meaning. So I was discussing with someone and I realized, okay, so I am means maternal aunt, okay, of Krishnaji. ठीक है. I love kids and I am very much fond of kids because I have learned a lot from babies and kids as compared to elders. Got cheated by elders, but never by kids. Never.
Hmm.
Too honest. Too honest that sometimes I feel like, okay, is there any way to get again into that age group? Okay, I will play and then come back. So, but it's not possible. So I just thought, okay, this baby is miraculous. Okay.
So no, Mataji, please desire. The problem is we don't desire. So the God doesn't create a facility for us. Nobody, you tell anybody today also, no, just you have to detach from the material plane. They will say, Okay, please keep away with your lecture. We are happy like this. And some people, अरे खाओ पियो मजा करो, क्या होना है, कल किसने देखा है, Hey, but the problem is if you scrutinizingly study, all this khana pina maja karna is going to yield lot of misery as per Bhagavad Gita. So one has to learn to, if not leave it, minimize it gradually. And then one will be able to understand God and his relationship with God. But one must desire to learn first. And that desire is born only in association of devotees. Sadhu Sang, Sadhu Sang, Sadhu Sang. So if you really want to progress, you must take association of devotees. Nobody can tell you about God. Even to develop desire, you must take association. Without that, it's not possible. So any more questions?
Ma'am, actually the four dharmas you had told once, can you repeat them? Austerity, cleanliness.
Yeah, austerity is austerity, cleanliness, truthfulness, and compassion, mercy.
Okay, thank you.
These are the four principal pillars of dharma. Everything else, you are Hindu, you are Muslim, you are this, anybody who compromises on the principles. There is a very nice story about Kali Yuga and Srimad Bhagavatam, that when Parikshit Maharaj was the king, till then, at the end of Parikshit Maharaj's reign, the Kali Yuga had to start. So, but in Parikshit Maharaj's kingdom, everybody was happy, hale and hearty, There was no sinful activity. That is the power of a good king. No sinful activity will take place. So there will be no suffering. There abundance of food will be there, abundance of facilities will be there. So he is going in his kingdom and he sees a very well-dressed man, looked like a king. He cuts away, there is one bull and a cow there. He is chopping away the legs of this cow and bull. So Parikshit Maharaj, he just goes there and he holds him by the neck. Because the king's responsibility is to protect the praja. Praja doesn't mean human beings alone. Praja means every living entity and even the plants and animals, everything. Plants and animals are also living entities in his kingdom. And he said, how dare you, hit and kill this cow? I won't let this happen. Who are you? So this king-like person, he answers, I am Kali Yuga. So I am created by God as per the desires of the living entities. Because many people want to enjoy irrestrictedly, I am created. And I cannot survive if these four pillars of dharma are there. So the four legs of the cow and the bull, they denote these four pillars. So in Kali Yuga, only mercy, I think, is left, compassion, little bit. The other three pillars are already cut off, destroyed, three legs. And this cow and bull are standing only on one leg. And he wants to cut away that also. So what are the three pillars which are already lost? Truthfulness, cleanliness, and I think truthfulness. Only mercy. Only mercy is left, little bit actually. So, so this Kali says that God has created me, and as a king, you have to let me also live. This is the purpose for which I am created. How can you just kill me like that? I am here to create all the misery for others, but you have to give me also shelter. So Parikshit Maharaj says, okay, in my kingdom, if you find any place where these four principles are not there, you can live. So this Kali goes around the entire kingdom, perfect kingdom. All the pillars of dharma are intact. No place he finds where there is intoxication, meat eating, illicit sex, gambling. Nothing is happening there. He doesn't allow. That is the power of a king. A king should be like that. Not that to please a certain section for votes, you should stoop down on principles. No. And he doesn't find a place to stay. So he comes back to Maharaj Parikshit and he says, King, I did not find any such place in your kingdom. But I have to stay somewhere. You have to accommodate me. You grant me one place of my choice where I can stay. So the Lord this Maharaj thinks, okay, what to do? Okay, you choose. Beyond these principles of religion, you can choose. I will not compromise on them. So Kali says, wherever there is gold, I should stay. He's very clever. Wherever there is money, because of the desire of sense gratification, all the principles of dharma are compromised. And Kali enters and ruins our life. That's how it is. So Srila Prabhupada said, if you want to guard against this Kali ka prabhav, then follow the four regulative principles. Keep your pillars of dharma intact, and Kali cannot enter you. It cannot enter your house. No non-vegetarian food. Yeah, the corresponding to the pillars of dharma. Austerity is destroyed by intoxication. Cleanliness is destroyed by illicit sex. And truth is destroyed by gambling. And compassion is destroyed by non-vegetarian food. You don't have compassion for other living entities, you kill them. So wherever these are happening, so you must refrain from these. They're sinful activities. They will bind you. At least lead a regulated life. So that is how it is, Mataji.
Thank you, ma'am. It was very nice story.
Hare Krishna. It's not a story, it is a pastime in Srimad Bhagavatam. So thank you all so much for your precious time. We will see you all tomorrow. I had announced that 9th and 10th I will not be there. So we'll resume the classes after that. I hope you'll all understand. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you.
Pancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhuba evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Ananta koti vaishnav vrind ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.